Hey, Printers, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Bruce from Printavo. We've got our co-hosts are out, Stephen and Mr. Matt Marcotte. That's okay. We're going to keep it rolling again this week. We've got a very special guest, though, Tye Gaddis out of Cole Apparel, San Fernando Valley, actually. And I'm spending a little bit of time in LA, so I'll have to swing by it sometime, too. But thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is pretty exciting. Definitely looked up you guys. Gotten a lot of information from you guys over the years. Really appreciate being here. Yeah, it's an honor. Thank you.
Heck yeah. No, thank you for spending the time. I know it is early for both you and producer Chris out in the West Coast.
Yeah, it's not too bad. We're up and running, and it's pretty much a normal day.
What time do you normally start your day off?
We usually start here at 6 o'clock. And that's because it's been pretty warm, and we try to keep the heat off the crew and just have where it doesn't get too hot in the shop. We end at 2:30, so 6 to 2:30 is generally our time during the summer, and we'll go back to 7 when it starts cooling down.
Got it. 5 days a week? 4 days a week?
5 days a week now, yeah.
That's awesome. What just tell us a little bit about Cole Apparel. You've been working on it for 6 years. How'd you get started?
Well, I actually sold apparel for a few years before that, and I started a clothing brand, and I just had a lot of trouble getting production done. For the sales company I worked for, we sold a lot of apparel, and there was difficulties getting it delivered. You do a trade show, you could sell way too much that the company couldn't handle, and it was just constant problems. And having started this clothing brand, I learned a lot about the apparel business. Not a ton. Don't want to make it seem like I learned a ton because I'm still learning every day, but I learned enough to think that I could actually do it and start a print shop. And, it's kind of the beginning of the end.
Wait, this was a clothing brand that you were doing before, or was it manufacturing or both?
There was two sides to it. We sold a lot to resorts. The company that I worked with was actually owned by my dad. We sold to resorts in California, and that was like a side job that I had for many years, selling and being around salesmen and guys that have been selling in the tourist business for 20 plus years. And as we started to sell apparel for that company, that sales company, we were just having trouble getting production delivered. We were having trouble getting orders delivered. You would go write a big order with a big resort, and then there would just be something going on with the print shop where they'd be delivering late. There was just lots of issues over the few years that we did that. So then we went back to what I learned from starting my own clothing brand. I would look at, hey, I could do this. This is something that I could possibly do.
That was because you guys were contracting everything out, right?
Yeah, we signed up as salesmen for that print shops. So it was like a commission-based relationship.
Got it. And your dad was doing this for quite a while?
Yeah, he had his company for close to 30 years at that point.
Wow, very cool. So this got you into the, having the exposure of the family being in it.
Yeah. Yeah, then it was just, as I got started, it was really trying to keep up with how the process actually works and getting super obsessed about the process. And I had not been exposed to print shops before that, so there was this very high expectation of what the print should look like. Plus, when I started, the printer I hired was actually really, really good. And I really didn't know anything about it, but I was learning how to do SEPs, going through rolls of film to get linearization from computer to film to screen to be as close as possible. I basically found Lon Winter's book and just studied that up and down, backwards and forwards, and just applied that every day to when we first started that print shop. It was just me and a printer, and didn't really know what bad printing looked like. And we were always doing multicolored prints. And it just, as soon as we started getting some exposure, I met some guys in the kind of the streetwear, street collectible industry. And when I started working with them, it was pretty easy. It wasn't, there was always difficulties, but there was not too many questions of like, hey, these prints have got to be way better. So our quality was kind of there.
Wait, so you had the clothing brand first, And then wanted to buy the equipment. Was that the step?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. The clothing brand started from a rock band I used to play with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And just started this crazy clothing brand and playing with a rock band at the time. And so I was doing lots of different things from sales to actually being on tour. When I first started, we were having trouble just delivering to resorts. When I started the clothing brand, I was having it produced somewhere else. I was having it produced at a pretty decent little shop, but that shop couldn't come anywhere close to delivering what we sold for resorts. Resorts, we'd do one trade show and sell $500,000 worth of orders that needed to be fulfilled in the next 4 months or something like that. The clothing brand was just really about the sourcing. That's what it really came down to, was where are these garments coming from? The supply chain of garments. So once I started the clothing brand, I really saw the supply chain of garments. Where are these coming from? How much do they cost? How available are they?
Got it.
And then the actual printing was the other part that needed to come together.
What was the equipment that you first bought? Do you remember?
I bought 2 manual presses. I remember taking out a loan on a car I had just paid off. I went back to the bank, got a loan on that, and I bought 2 manual presses.
Do you remember what the loan amount was?
It was somewhere around $15,000.
And wait, why'd you buy 2 manual presses?
The whole shop was for sale.
Okay.
And I ended up selling all of it and getting rid of all of it in 3 months, getting an auto. If I could change
who guided
anything,
you to that? Because I feel like when we bought our used kit and it was a manual, I just didn't even know very much about what an auto was or anything like that. It was just so foreign.
Yeah, it was all really foreign to me as well at the time. If I could go back and change anything, I would have just bought the auto starting out, because we just couldn't keep up with a manual. We'd have to sell a 6-color job that had some really cool artwork on it, and then we'd have to sell it at resort prices, so it just didn't make any sense.
So were the sales from the work that you were working with your dad used to help fuel the production that you just bought, or was this total separate? You were finding your own sales, in the clothing world and music world.
Basically, we'd got the manuals. I was studying the process in I think December 2014, and then went and sold all the resorts with the samples that we'd printed on the manuals, and they needed delivery by April or May. So we went out and sold maybe 50 or 60 orders, came back in January, February, started trying to print them and seeing how slow the process was. Went to the ISS show, went into the NASDAR booth or the M&R booth, and really was kind of trying to communicate, I think I might need an automatic, but I'm not sure. And the next week, there was a sales rep from NASDAR at the shop. His last name was Cook. He's not in the business anymore, but he showed care. He went through all my films, all the jobs that I'd kind of all the Excel files I had pieced together. And he said that I could do it. And I believed him. And I went with Beacon Funding and just got started.
That's huge. I mean, that is literally the best sales technique right there. It's just being helpful. It's just giving advice and just helping and understanding. And
yeah, it's too bad he's not in the business. That guy really gave me the confidence to be able to do it.
Plus, sounds like plus Lon's book. Shouts out Mr. Winters.
Oh, yeah. Lon has been a great help. Whenever I get a chance, I always try to tell him, shout out to Lon for sure.
That's awesome. So it sounds like there was a really high amount of sales that you were able to pull right out of the gate, which helped fuel stuff up. But I mean, you had to learn fast. Obviously, jumping in and getting such large orders right out of the gate. Did you have to hire people? You said you had one production person. What was that first 6 months like?
It was a lot of fun, Went through a lot of screens and a lot of film. But that, and also that press operator didn't speak a ton of English, so we really communicated through like the affinity of printing, like, trying to figure out how to dial back the amount of ink being put down through a screen, dial back the information on like a sim process print, and then being able to learn also what a choke was from a great printer that could mix inks really well, could make the prints look great, but we didn't even speak the same language. It was really interesting.
Is he still with you today?
No, he's not, unfortunately. Yeah, it's kind of a sad story, but yeah, he would be for sure.
Got it. So is a lot of your work still coming from resorts, or did you pivot to a different area?
Well, we've really branched over to doing like a streetwear genre that's, streetwear has changed so much over the years, and I haven't even really been a big follower of streetwear, but if you look back in the growth of the company, we were in 1,200 square feet just doing resorts, able to pretty much keep up. It's a little bit of a struggle sometimes because of space. But there was a point where I think I was just talking at a trade show pretty early on. There's a sales rep from Weimar, and I was talking to him, telling him, hey, we could print your crazy jackets. They have those jackets that can melt real easily, and they're double lined, and they're really difficult to print. But anyways, he gave me a referral to a clothing brand on Melrose, and they needed something really crazy, like, hey, we need 400 t-shirts with 3 placements, a neck label, and a sewn-on label, and we need it shipped to Vietnam tomorrow. And of course I said, yeah, sure. And we got it done. And then they referred me to a few other guys that were just, I remember this one company we started working with, his first orders were 36 pieces. And then he turned out to where he's a $10 million company now, and that was 2016. He has somewhere like 50 employees. And I remember he was just heat pressing in his at his house. And we started doing some prints for him.
Wow, this is a retail brand.
Yeah, it's a retail brand, and they're in, all the big box stores, and so that was working with them was actually a big learning experience for us over the last 5 years, because he grew so quickly that they are pushing us to really make our processes, fine tune our processes. Yeah, and it's still a learning experience, but.
What were some of the takeaways so far from the changes that they helped force you guys to push as they grew a ton?
Well, a lot of little things. How an order is, they're in downtown, we're in the valley, so we send pallets almost every day. And it's how those pallets arrive, what marking is on the pallets, how the product is packed. We went from 1,200 square feet to 3,200 square feet, and now we're in 14,000. And just in the transitionary period, it was just having us update our admin, really. And now we have to be specific on our hiring so people can handle the workload. Like if we're receiving 10 pallets, how does that get checked in? As well as receiving big orders from UPS, you have to have someone, like in receiving, we're hiring right now. And that's why my attention's on that. But you got to find the guys somebody that can really handle it. Otherwise, the admin breaks down, the orders don't get organized in time. It just helped us strengthen our supply chain or our processes in the shop from one department to another.
How do you plan then on hiring somebody like that to help, right? Because you're saying that it seems like a very specific role. Is that you're trying to find somebody with the aptitude and then you train them, or you're trying to find somebody who is experienced in receiving in a warehouse somewhere that you can help mold?
We're doing a lot of interviews, and there's still a little difficulty on hiring. Like I think we've had 2 no-shows in the last day yesterday, but I think both. There's a mixture of both. There's definitely being able to give someone a concept, like, hey, there's a concept of how to organize, and then you can come back and check on them in an hour and have they organized it. And, that's how I found some really great people. Just looking at
what. So you give them that project, and then
Yeah.
hey, here. So how does that work? Like, what do you set up? What are they supposed to do? What instructions do you give them?
Well, I just explain like a bin system, or depending on the area, uh, and depending on the concept. But as an example, our previous receiving manager, who's now moved up to our shipping and over finishing, she like runs that department, but she was in charge of receiving and shipping. And I just had give her a concept of, hey, have you heard of a bin system? All these boxes, maybe we should organize it in a bin system. And I do a little demo on a dry erase board. And I checked on her in a couple hours, and she had it done already. All the tape was on the floor. They were all labeled. The Excel file was set up. And so, yeah, there's aptitude. Like, that's a good example of someone who can take a concept and just turn it into a physical thing. And so there's definitely looking for that, as well as we have ads out for people with experience. So we're interviewing both and just looking for a problem solver.
Got it. And do you do that same experiment with them, or is it trying to jump them into whatever is going on that day? Like, are you kind of resetting it and then they do that exact project again for a new interview candidate?
No, there's other issues that arrive of just the volume of product. Maybe we receive 5 products that are incomplete. How is that going to be managed? How is that communication going to happen between receiving and the sales department? So, it's looking at other problems that we have. Like, that problem is solved, but we have other problems to like look at and try and tackle. How are we going to communicate if we receive 10 orders and 2 of them are complete and 3 of them are incomplete? Or, it's like looking at the problems at hand and not creating more problems for them to solve.
Got it. Okay. So you're really grabbing whatever is happening within those couple days or something that you need to get done and asking them, here's how would you handle this, or showing them and then letting them do it. And that's the test.
Yeah. It kind of evolves, to be honest. Like I have 2 account reps, and shipping are out there organizing and really looking at, getting all the POs separated, getting all the products separated, and then just rehashing out the process of, okay, it seems to change every day. Just where product arrives and then it has to go to sewing, and then more product arrives and it's partly incomplete, partly complete. So it's those issues that come up that I think it's actually solved now because we've spent all day on it yesterday, but it's probably 100 boxes to keep track of.
I highly view project-based interviews as, let me find something that literally they're going to be doing every day, and that's what I'm going to create a project around. That's what we do for engineers. That's what we do for design. That's what we do for product management. That's what we do for sales, everything. I mean, even the sales will say, like, my example is, you work at a clock company, so you don't need to know T-shirts. There's a lot of nitty-gritty stuff. You're selling clocks. Everybody knows what a clock is. I'm going to give you a call, and we're just going to role play back and forth. And I see if, like, are they asking me questions about why am I looking for a new clock? Or, what's the problem with my current clock? And then I also will cut them off at the end just to say, like, hey, I actually got to run, and I'll see if they grab my info. Are they grab my phone number and that kind of stuff? Just to, like, do they have like a basic sense of their awareness and what they should be doing as a best practice? I had a person once before that just took a pause and is just like, I don't know anything about clocks. And I was like, okay. It was just like, thanks for interviewing.
Honesty. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate not wasting either of our time.
Yeah. I try to appreciate that too. No-shows. Guys that are no-showing, it's such a waste of time. Just give us a call. It's all right.
But they applied for your role, though, right?
Yeah, and somebody
That's why
came.
It's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, we had somebody who came. Per his resume, he was an Amazon manager of about 20 people. His interview went great. We're trying to find quality people, so we're definitely way above minimum wage.
Yeah.
And we officially hired him, said, hey, why don't you come on for a trial period of a few weeks, and then let's settle into a full-time gig? And he said, sure, I'd love it. And he sent us the email, and he just won't show up. Like, I don't understand why he won't show up if you even accept the job.
I mean, I guess that's a project in itself of just showing up.
My God. Yeah, that's the first test. It's like, great interview, but can you show up, So,
what roles are you guys looking for right now?
Let's see. Well, that's a big one. It's a receiving manager. Receiving and internal inventory. We've got about 40,000 pieces that need to be inventoried. It's not as lean as I'd like to be, but...
Finished goods or blanks?
Blanks. Yeah.
And are those specifically from the companies, or are you stocking because of supply chain problems?
Specifically for one clothing brand.
Oh, okay, got it. So they're sending you the stuff and they're asking you to inventory and then print off when they're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, and they'll come in or organize the inventory if things get a little out of whack, or like they're very hands-on. But that's a big one, is receiving and inventory management. That's just a real big one that we need to cover. I've got shipping and receiving is taken care of. Our account reps are looking really good. We just hired a new production manager.
Ooh.
Yeah. He's
what happened to the previous one?
Well, the shop had grown, and so it was the part of like taking one of your best press operators and making him a production manager and running into where some of the management skills weren't quite there, as well as it's just too much. When it goes from 10 people to 25 people, things can get out of hand pretty easily if you don't have a handle on it. And having just experience from my shop, it's pretty hard for us to break our bad habits or make changes that were going to severely help the shop with that kind of management structure. So he's now a floor manager, and he has the help of another floor manager. And then our production manager is our separator, which I found. So
what's the difference for you guys between floor and production manager?
Well, floor managers will definitely have their hands on with the presses. Anything that's stopping those presses from running, they're working on. They're both press operators themselves, so if there's a technical issue of registering a print, they're on it with the press operators. They can relieve people because they can run a press as well, so they're relieving guys for breaks. That's like the floor managers that we have. There's ink that needs to be mixed for something, or they're giving direction. They know everything about those processes on the floor.
Got it. Okay. So it's like a lead for this press group or like pod of people, it sounds like.
Yeah. Like we have 4 presses now, so we're about 3 people per press is 12. Ink department, and squeegee and flood bar prep. It's about 2 people there. So looking at plus the floor manager is 16.
Got it. I didn't ask, how many people do you guys have total then?
I think it's 24.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was just counting.
That makes sense. The floor manager then seems like a really good next step versus full production manager. Although you guys are at a size where those, could be distinguished. I read a really good piece of advice that said, don't promote people 2 steps up, only do 1. Because like this example, it's so different in the role shift from, like, let's say they're at individual contributor. Now you need lead 1 and then there's manager 1. Jumping up those 2 rungs is asking for problems just because they didn't master the middle step first. But I've made that mistake too, but it's a really great thing to think about.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially if you might not have really proper training for that position. Like,
did you think you had it before,
no,
maybe you haven't?
Definitely not.
What about now?
It's getting better. Yeah, we actually put in I keep wanting to say static, but that's not the name of the book. It's Traction, that book that you guys talked about, right? So there's the responsibility board, and I can't tend to call it an organization board. It's very similar, but it's like the responsibility board. What's the other name for it? Anyways, it shows the structure of the company and basically the communication channels. So you've got guys at the top, you've got guys that go down each column, And so we've got that in place. And then we started putting job descriptions for each position and trying to make
Got
sure
it.
that.
So like your organizational chart.
Yeah, organizational chart. Thanks. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have that pretty well laid out for production, and just making sure that guys are getting write-ups and getting descriptions. And with Printavo, there's all the statuses. So who's in charge of what status and how does that flow with our organization chart? So it's really just rehashing it a couple times a week to make sure the crew understands it, see who's stepping on each other's toes, because if we've got 4 departments in production, I don't want the receiving manager talking to somebody in a different department and telling him to do something else. Like, it just gets all out of whack. So,
there's a really good principle we were just recording a video on called that buyback principle, where you buy back time off your calendar. So a lot of times we try to hire for people who can add more capacity, but it literally just adds more onto us because there's nothing that's taking off our plate. It's adding more capacity to the business, but that's also adding more to us. And you're literally trying to just like shoot water through a straw, versus getting more time back and hiring people that can help pull time off. So maybe it's an hour off your day or 2 hours off your day, which I think the production manager, if hired right and trained right, is such a big piece of that. So, and probably very undervalued, just as like having a very senior manager type of person that makes it so you don't really have to think about this.
Oh yeah, I've made that mistake. I've hired someone, you give them an email, give them a job description, and then they add more communication with that email. All of a sudden you get 5 emails, 10 emails a day from them, and you're like looking at your emails already just super full. I mean, that's what you're talking about, right? You add somebody, but they're not actually taking away from your time. This person I hired should have became my assistant just to learn everything that I was doing, and then I should have taken a chunk of what I do and turned it over to her, which a lot of what I was doing at the time was sales. And my email was just full, and I should have just turned over all my sales to her, trained her really well, and just turned over all my sales, and then I would have had time. And I instead said, hey, why don't you create your own sales program? Like, here's a sales program. Why don't you go grow more business? Like, I could have grown more business and then turned over all the like moving customers to her. I made a mistake there. I definitely look back at that as it's like, if I'm a good salesman and I have customers already grooved in and things moving smoothly, turn that over to somebody and then look at new business.
Yeah. Where'd you find your production manager?
He was a referral from a pretty big shop that's a few blocks away from us. That's been kind of my big brother, like going back to the beginning where that great press operator I started with, he came from a really big shop of, I don't know, they were a really big shop for me at the time, which was like 7 autos. They were doing a lot of Disney stuff. They did when Star Wars relaunched, they did all of that stuff. Force Awakens, like all the stuff that you saw on Target, they did so much of that.
Was he leaving their shop, or it was just a friend of his?
Sorry, I tend to ramble. He was referred by that manager, which I've become friends with over the years.
Got it. Okay.
He came from, I guess you could say, a competitive shop, but a shop that works in streetwear as well, or in that kind of genre, working with a lot of clothing brands. So he's an amazing separator, and that helps a ton.
And he had industry experience then, which sounds like that was a huge help too.
Yeah, maybe 15 to 20 years at this time.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the industry that we tend to work with most.
Got it. And so how does the org chart look on the production side? So you've got the production manager. Are they overseeing everything from press operators, floor managers, to even screen prep, ink?
Yeah, he's over the
shirts,
whole thing.
All that? Okay, got it.
Yeah, shirts as well. So it goes Department 11A, art and screen preparation and ink preparation. And then you've got inventory management and receiving. And then you've got actual press production. and then you've got shipping, finishing, and shipping. We have in the same department, and so I have department heads for each one. So hopefully I'm answering your question, but the hierarchy goes where the production manager would not be directly being bombarded by everybody in those lower departments. They kind of have to work up the communication chain. They need to talk to the department head before they go to the production manager.
So who's the department head then of arts and screens? Is that somebody that's operating, or is there actual lead, like you have the floor manager on the press side?
Yeah, I'd say he's a lead in that department. It's Brian. He's been processing our screens for a few years, and now he's moved up to where he has 4 people that work under him.
Got it. So what does his day-to-day look like too? And the reason I ask this is because I've seen a very common structure on the press side, but not as much on the pre-production side. And so, maybe there's one person that's cleaning screens and then running a CTS, for example. But you've got one manager managing 4. Is his role very operational driven, or is he also sort of like a contributor and manager type?
Yeah, he's still contributing quite a bit. We have a production board that we follow that helps lay out our schedule. Shout out to the power scheduler. Hopefully that's coming out real soon. We're excited about that.
Yeah, we are super. We have one of our best engineers working on it, actually. I saw some screenshots last week, so I'll send it to you after. It's really, really cool. If you are on Printavo, the power schedule is going to be huge. It gives you statuses per decoration type. You can assign them to departments, people, stations, like our equipment. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're
looking for.
You're
getting me too excited.
No, that's great. I mean, the biggest thing that we're looking for is being able to schedule a job in more than one place at one time.
Yeah.
And we've had plenty of debates about, is it done with tasks? But then how do you not kill off a department? We're trying to get a nice, even Kanban flow through the shop, and we can easily kill off a department where it's like, oh, they have 10,000 pieces to do in a day. And it's like, oh,
yes,
this is what are we doing? So it's like we've basically turned it into a big board that just moves from left to right through the processes. That's similar to our statuses. But we're looking forward to that, because we'd like to go more paperless, have more touch screens and computers around. We do have about 7 on the floor, but I'd like it where a press operator can come up and see his schedule for the day. And then we can do that now, but it's just hard to have that move through every department the same way.
Yeah. No, power schedule is going to be big. We're super excited about it too.
Man, we're excited.
We're shooting for a preview for Print Hustlers Conf. So October 22nd, 23rd. Don't forget to get your tickets. They are almost gone. There's about 15 tickets left.
Oh man, I got to get on it. I've been meaning to do that.
Yeah. Do it. I'll shoot you something after so you can purchase those. But you talked about investing in middle management. I mean, there's clearly like a layer of people here that are responsible, so they're not directly going straight to you. When did this start? Like, would you have started it earlier? Tell me about that whole process.
Well, I sound a lot like Steven, because he was pretty much hiring middle management about the same time that I was. And I bet his circumstances were a little bit different. I don't want to make it sound like everybody's the same. But when you start looking at what happens to you on a day-to-day basis, you can probably start to tell, especially if you're reading about management, listening to you guys, studying different management types. You can start to tell, wow, am I getting asked a question that I really shouldn't be responsible for? I would say start the hiring process sooner than later and start doing interviews and getting to know people. It's just because
like, is there a person or a revenue number, or what's the trigger?
Well, that's a really good question. I wish Mark Coudray was around here. He'd probably have a good answer for that one.
Where were you guys at when you started?
It really got to it. I guess there's a number that can go to it, but when you look at the shop and it's like we're just not hitting the numbers that we need to hit, and we want it to be more efficient, we need to find somebody that has that experience. I mean, there's that part of it. Then you go back and look at the numbers, and you're trying to keep your per employee per what you have projected for the year, and I mean, that's a pretty loaded question for a production guy like me. We do get help in this area, like looking at our numbers and seeing whether it's the right time. But
is there a number that you could share that you felt comfortable affording more middle management? Like, was it like you said, the dollar per employee? Was that the trigger, or was it just a profit number?
Well, let's say you're doing 1.5 and you want to get to 4, 3, and 4 million, and you're looking at where someone's got to be able to control those bottlenecks and get all the production line flowing. So I looked at it personally like an investment. It's like we're trying to get to our next place, so we know that we're going to need it. When you get to a certain level, investing $100,000 in your shop, or 50 or 20, you have to look at what you're going to get out of it. If you're going to buy a piece of equipment and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to pay, it's $200,000 press, I'm going to pay this off over the next 5 years. What are you going to be able to produce with that? And that's the way I looked at it. It was hard for me to look at a numbers thing. I looked at what I wasn't accomplishing. And so it wasn't like, okay, I'm in a safe place to make this investment. It was like, what is our goal? Like, that was more important to me than like attaining the goal is pretty important. Of course, you want to be in the right market to where you actually make money doing this. But at the time, as well as his resume fell on my lap, this production manager, and I feel like I got pretty lucky. And what he's asking for, I don't think in Los Angeles, in the climate that we're in right now, I don't think it's that bad. Like, I definitely don't want to put it out there, but I didn't think it was that bad. It was very fair, and there's room for growth.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like when you're small, even us as a software business, like we just couldn't afford really good managers, I think. But our third hire is who's our CTO now. No, our fourth, who's our CTO now. And that was definitely a leap, like salary-wise, that was definitely a big jump. But like you mentioned, they turned out to be somebody that was very good to help manage the rest of the technology side for us. And so, that helped grow, and then we could continue to grow with that person then too. So with him. So, it is interesting. It's interesting to think about, right? Because it is definitely the investment, but it is very hard to make the investment unless you have that. Now, I mean, we personally built up revenue over a long period of time. It was probably 6 years, 7 years before I could afford to have that person on. So definitely took some time. But yeah, it's interesting just to think about, because it's like a no-brainer now, right? Mm-hmm. But then it's like, okay, when should it have been a no-brainer? And that's where it's unclear. But I think if I were to go back, I think what I would have done is personally, every department that has more than 2 people, the third person needs to be some sort of lead that has potential to like really manage. And that way, you don't get overdone with too many contributors and not enough people that can help strategize and manage and coach and do all that stuff.
Yeah,
but
that sounds really good. And probably per industry and per department, it's a little bit different. But as long as a manager is aware that there is a number, okay, in this department, there needs to be, for every 4 people, I need a project manager. I need someone who's going to coordinate and plan the day, or, it's right. It's wise what you're saying. It's probably just knowing that those numbers may shift.
Yeah. But this has been an awesome chat, Tye. What are you looking forward to in the future? I know you're trying to add embroidery.
Oh, No, I don't want to look at any other processes. We actually have a couple sewing machines coming in. So we're doing a lot of relabeling, like
okay.
yeah, 10 to 20,000 pieces a month in relabeling that we're sending out. And one of my buddies that has a couple sew shops, he's talking me into getting a couple sewing machines for that. I feel like I have so much still to perfect on the process of screen printing that, oh no, now we got to think about sewing. But it could be great. It'd be a lot of fun to experiment with what we could do with sewing. He wants us to put in a full cut and sew to be able to sew our own shirts.
Who, your customer or the?
Just a friend of mine that runs a few cut and sews. He wants us. He's like pushing me to do that. I think it's really interesting, but it's also just a little scary.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe I'm just being a chicken about it, and I just need to go for it.
I mean, you can always try it. I've seen a lot of shops that will just, they'll buy the stuff they need. They'll try it. They'll try to staff it, give it 6 months. And if it works, awesome.
Sure.
And if it's profitable, if not, I'm sure you could sell the equipment too. And
yeah, just give it a test. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, Tye, this is super appreciated. I just want to thank you for being able to join us. I know it's early. I'm actually, next time I'm out there, I'm definitely coming by so we could do a little shop tour. So I'll let you know whenever, see what's a good time for you guys.
It'll be fun.
Awesome. This is Tye Gaddis from Cole Apparel. You guys can check him out. And you guys can reach out. Tye, what is your email here if anybody has?
Tye at Cole Apparel. That's TYE at COLEAPPAREL.
Boom. Thanks so much. Out of the San Fernando Valley, this is Tye at Cole Apparel. We'll see you guys in the next episode. I'm Bruce from Printavo.